Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zach Cherry, and with me as always is...
Please let the dreams be real. Eddie of Edward is Truth.
And today we are talking about the new released horror movie, The Black Phone, which just came out June 24th, 2022. So, we just went to the theater and saw this over the weekend, separately.
Not together.
Yeah, you live in the States, I live in Canada. So why don't you get us started with a synopsis?
All right. A shy but clever 13-year-old boy named Finney Shaw gets abducted by a sadistic masked killer who traps Finney in a soundproof basement where no one will hear him scream. But a disconnected phone on the wall begins to ring, and when Finney answers, he can hear voices of the killer's previous victims. Between these helpful ghosts and Finney's sister, Gwen, who's also begun to embrace her psychic abilities in search of her missing brother, supernatural children everywhere are dead set on making sure something dreadful doesn't happen to Finney. The Black Phone.
I didn't do it in context this time because I'm tired.
Well, it good enough. We'll see.
Yeah, why not?
But,
it worked.
Okay, so just to get right to it, what are your initial thoughts? This has been a movie that, it was supposed to come out last year. We'll just say it was 2021, and it got pushed back because of life, and we're finally getting it now, and this is Blumhouse, obviously. But it was getting a lot of buzz. Even like a year ago, I guess, for people who had pre-screened it, and just up to like this past month, was getting a lot of good reviews. So where do you fall on that?
Well, first off, let me say I remember seeing the trailer some time ago. I think when it was originally supposed to be released in maybe 2021. I don't even remember. Yeah. But and seeing the trailer, I was interested. I was definitely piqued my interest, and then I found out, that hasn't opened yet? Oh, right, life. So I saw it, and honestly, overall, I have to say, I'm not really all that enthusiastic about it in retrospect. I don't think I'll see it again.
Oh, wow.
That's how I feel. What about you overall?
I liked it. I do have notes, which we're going to get to, but I felt overall like I was happy to see it. I think that so far on of all the horror movies that have come out this year, 2022, I'd say it's third. I would say it's behind Scream, which is also behind X. So X has been my favorite so far, and that's retained that first place spot. But I think that it's going to be hard to not. I mean, obviously we're going to go through this, and there's going to be a lot of comparisons made to Sinister. And I think that for the most part, I would say that this is an improvement over Sinister, just in terms of some of the things that I felt were lacking in that movie. But at the same time, I feel that there were certain things that movie had which were lacking in this one. So it's almost like for Scott Derrickson to kind of hone in on what he got right in that movie, he also lost a lot of the other things that he got right. So overall, I mean, I thought it was good. Okay. I'll definitely see it again. I might even buy it, but I'm not going to rush to go see it in the theater again. And I'm sure. Well, we'll see as more horror movie releases come out this year, if it can still kind of keep that top 3 spot, or if it's going to move down for me. But That's without really getting into it just yet. That's kind of where it is for me.
Okay. What do you think, if I may ask, what do you think Scott Derrickson and basically like, you know, his team at large improved upon with this in relation to Sinister?
Sinister character. Because in Sinister we had Ellison Oswald, I want to say is the name of the Ethan Hawke character, and his family, and also the James Ransone character, and I felt that like nobody was relevant in that movie other than Ethan Hawke, and we spent the entire movie following Ethan Hawke around in these scenarios that just felt very repetitive, and we definitely saw like the evolution of a man whose psyche was coming undone slowly, which was an interesting character study. But in terms of like the relationships to everyone else, it was just like, why are these people here? Why is his wife and kids here when they're not even important enough to the story for us to like even remember their names or even get more than 1 minute with them at a time? So I feel with The Black Phone, I want to say like this movie started off really strong. I do want to say that I was much more engrossed in the story at the beginning than as we went through, and I'll talk about like where I think that maybe they took some wrong turns. But the first act of everything and just like building this relationship with the two siblings who, as far as I'm concerned, were the breakout stars and characters of this movie, of Finney and Gwen. Let me just look up their names here because I did not. Mason Thames, who played Finney, who's relatively
and Madeline
new.
McGraw.
Yeah, he hasn't really been in a whole lot. And Madeline McGraw was she's been in some stuff. She did the voice of Bonnie in Toy Story 4. I was very impressed with them, and I definitely like this was a movie like it really tugged at some emotional heartstrings for me. I definitely felt the bond between these two characters, and that was really a driving force for like especially the beginning, but then going into the rest of it, which I don't want to say was completely successful of where it turned out, but I think that just in terms of the improvement, they definitely got that right with those or at least like with your main character, and making it someone who I was interested in their story. I wanted to see, I was rooting for them because I don't think that Ellison in Sinister, I was just like, I picked him as the cherry picker, like that's when your main character is that awful. Not to say that.
Didn't we also establish? Sorry.
I was just gonna say not that Ethan Hawke was awful in that. I thought he did a great job in Sinister, but still, like I wanna at least get behind my main character, and I think that Finney, or Finn, as he likes to be called, and Gwen, by extension, were a vast improvement.
Okay, I can see that. I also wanted, just to comment, didn't we say in our Sinister pod that it was basically like a bad version of The Shining? Like, I mean, a tale as old as time, a story that gets recycled over and over again. And if you can't at least be on par with what you're paying homage to or full-on ripping off, then why do it? But that said, I'm glad that you brought up the relationship between the siblings, because you made me think about two moments. And the first, I'll lead with the positive. It was the moment after an excruciating scene where Gwen is being beat by their father with a belt for having visions because she's not her mother, and because apparently her mother had visions, and she started the vision started telling her to do things, and I kind of lost track at one point because I got a little derailed because it was such a frank depiction of violence for me, and I was really upset at the immobilization. I'm sure Finney was too, but the immobilization of Finney standing there screaming at him to stop but not intervening. There was the moviegoer part of me wanted to see it stopped, and also maybe felt a little upset because I didn't feel like the movie necessarily earned this scene. It felt it made me uncomfortable. I thought the performance by Madeleine, what's her last name, McGraw, was amazing. And I don't know how. I know that's a scene you have to shoot multiple takes from multiple angles and everything like that. And I don't know how she did that and kept her little heart intact. And so that's an achievement. But then the moment that stuck out for me while you were talking about the relationship is the moment when everything is settled and the father just kind of like disappears. And the two of them just sit down, the two siblings just sit and watch television, and she just kind of cocks her head and just leans it on his shoulder, on her brother's shoulder, while she's just trying to collect herself and, you know, like muffle her her cries and stuff. That was sad, and that was and moving. That said, the way the movie plays out and reaches another moment where they reconnect at the very end. Spoilers, folks.
Okay.
Where he's running out of the house.
We're talking about a movie. There's going to be spoilers.
I know. But while he's like running out of the house, and while she's like running in the opposite direction of everybody else, because she's the only one who sees him, and everybody thinks they've caught the, Silence of the Lambs. She runs to him and like holds him, and there's this big emotional reunion, and the two of them are sitting in the back of the ambulance, just like, I guess, wrapped in blankets or something, just talking to each other. And I remembered that moment passed by, and I had no emotional investment in it, and I thought, I should be bawling my eyes out right now. These kids in a violent household, victims of an abusive father. Like, this girl has these powers that she's been told to deny, and she used them to try and help find her brother, and now she's found her brother, who's her world, basically. Like, that's the impression I got from her performance. And here he is seeing the light of day, like, finally, like, actually, like, free and everything like that. They're reconnected. And I am such a crier, and I was not crying. Something was missing for me, and I think it was the rest of the movie. Because I felt like it was too scattered. I felt like there were a lot of good ideas. I could see what they were going for. And I just think I wish the script could have gone through a few more drafts. I think I wish there could have been things edited out. I think I wish that Scott Derrickson's inclinations as a director and as a storyteller could have taken me less in that room. I was not interested in what transpired in that room. I was not scared of it. I was just disgusted by the grabber. And this is like this. Let's get into it. Okay. I have a thing. Yes.
Well, no. It's just okay, because you always do this where we're already in it, but then you're getting into it.
Yeah.
I
Really getting into it.
I just want to pull it back a second here, because you did mention The Shining, which I guess we referenced in Sinister, because I did pick up on a lot of references, and you also mentioned Silence of the Lambs, because obviously huge Silence of the Lambs influence. You've got the grabber, as it were, doing the whole Buffalo Bill thing with the van. And then obviously the fake out with the different houses, which was done very unsuccessfully here. I agree with what you say when you say that it was scattered and could have been worked around a little. But there's definitely The Shining. There was definitely Dr. Sleep. There were some other things they might come back to me. But I think that what I will say is that it wasn't scary. There was never any part that I was scared, and I think that this has a lot to do, and I know you were gonna get into the grabber here, but I think that that's kind of where this movie failed in one aspect, is that the grabber was just not an interesting character to me in any sense at all. And not to say that Ethan Hawke was bad, like he was fine, but it was just like he wasn't given anything juicy to work with. He was basically just this. It was almost like it's like when you think of like Michael Myers, and you know what makes him so scary is that like there's so much mystique behind him. It's almost like everything that we don't know about him. Whereas the Grabber, it was almost like it's not even a point where there's stuff that we don't know about him. It's just that there's literally nothing there. Like it's an absence of a character in like the worst sense of anything. So I never felt at any point that Finn was in any sort of danger. Like I always like knew he's getting out of this. Like there's no we've spent the entire movie showing a very capable young boy who's clearly like smart and resourceful and knows everything, while we've spent absolutely no time with Ethan Hawke at all. The only time we see him is when he comes down, which there were very few scenes of him even being there. Like I'd be interested to actually clock in how much screen time Ethan Hawke has in this movie, because I don't think that it's any more than 5 minutes. Maybe 7. I don't know, but it didn't even feel like that. It felt like a lot less. And everything, even like the James Ransone character, who just felt like completely shoehorned in there for what felt like a twist or like a surprise, like a jump scare at the end there, which I totally saw come, like when he opens the door and he discovers like, oh, I knew he had something down here, but it's just like, why is the door only open a crack with your face in it, and you seem to be looking in a different direction? That's just like, I know that Ethan Hawke is behind you when you open the door the whole way. That it was just like, you totally unsuccessful jump scare there. But that's definitely one of the areas where I felt that, you know, like Bagul in Sinister was terrifying. I mean, we talked about how people consider that to be one of the scariest movies ever made, which neither of us agreed with, but I will say that it was a very startling movie. Like, they successfully built up jump scares in that. Whereas, like, we then kind of transition into the Grabber, who, as far as I'm concerned, like, I'll take the fisherman over him, like, any day.
Yeah, I think I would too, because at least he made me jump. But okay, let me address James Ransone. I like him as an actor. I like what I've seen him do thus far. I really liked him in Sinister, and I really liked him in It Chapter 2. It's not even his fault in this movie, but I concur with you. I felt like if his character was there to provide comic relief, failure on the part of the filmmakers, because all he was doing was cocaine and conspiracy talk before we got the reveal for like who the hell he was. And I was like, are they trying to lighten the mood, because it's not working? And I don't, but it's not even not working because there's any particular mood set. Like I think you put it great in terms of like the Grabber being a non-character. What would actually terrify me more about the Grabber, and it actually made me think as I was leaving the theater, I thought about, I won't offer any spoilers, but I thought about a movie we reviewed on your Patreon called Fresh, that was dropped on Hulu this year. And it just made me think about, without spoilers, showing a duality with a person who has a secret, you know, kind of like a secret life that they, and even a secret room, shall we say, or a secret section of their home, and then watching them kind of conduct themselves in that's what terrifies me about a character like that, is that they can move freely about in the light of day, and people don't know how sick they are. You know, they're not, it's not that they're this creepy, imposing, a sinister character. It's that they're a human being who just, this darkness is housed within them. I mean, they even have like the ability to abduct someone. And
Buffalo Bill, who is like home. You know, largely kind of the inspiration. Like, you know, we saw so much of him, you know, even in his like attempts to lure his victims, like, you know, pretending to be a cripple and you know, needing help moving a couch into a van or whatever. Whereas like here, and this is kind of, and you know, I'll get more into what they could have improved upon later, but I didn't like how Finn was abducted, because it almost like undermined his intelligence as a character, because it's like, here you are as a kid in this town where you know that people are being abducted, and you know, has no trepidations about walking up to this stranger in a van who's just like, I'm a magician. It's just like, are those black balloons? Like, after already knowing what your sister said, and then like immediately getting grabbed by the grabber.
Yeah.
But I mean, he did fight back, but it was still like, it was almost like that's how you segued the story into kind of like the second act. Like it was just like, yeah, like you said, there should have been some rewrites there. And in terms of the James Ransone character, I never found that to be... I mean, when we first saw him, because it was like the cops came to the house, and he's like, yeah, come in, and, you know, showing this map and all that. And I thought that was it. Like, that was all we were going to see of him. Like, he was just kind of like a wacky character. Maybe he would like show up again later on. Like, he's not a big part of it. But then immediately, like when he goes and he does the rail off of the coffee table, it does the transition to the below the floorboards. So it, like, from that point on, I'm just like, oh, so is this the same house? And I don't know if like they were already trying to clue us in on that, but I mean, like, when you go from like beneath the floorboards of the same scene into the next one, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking back to Malignant, and you know, shit like that. So maybe, I mean, it didn't feel like a twist that was ever earned, like, and especially with the like the Silence of the Lambs thing with like the Clarice at the wrong house and them going there, and none of that. It's just like, I don't understand what they were trying to do other than copy Silence of the Lambs, but do it wrong. Because I think that what might have been a more successful way of doing that is to have the house that the cops actually break into be the one where James Ransone's character lives. And it looks the same. Like, that was another thing. Like, the interiors of both houses were exactly the same, but the exteriors were different. But I mean, like, that aside, and then they found out, oh no, it's the house across the street. That's where his brother lives, or something like that. You know, that would have been better than just being like, well, he has this house, which is empty because that's where he buries the bodies. And like, what of any sense does that make?
Also, why would he ever house his brother in the house that has a live child when across the street the basement just has dead bodies and all he has to do is lock a door to keep his brother out of there? Like, you run a greater risk having your live captive child, you know, like, share a space, even no matter how soundproof it is. I mean, that door, I think that was a problem.
Yeah, like, but why it didn't work is because, like, it was almost like, because with Silence of the Lambs, when the FBI gets there and the house is empty, and then you have, what's-his-face's character who's just like, Clarice, even though that doesn't make any sense that he would, like, immediately think of her, but it's still, like, for us, the audience, we know, like, shit, it's the house that she's going to is the one where the danger is. But at that point, as they were transitioning, like, both scenes, like, just like playing them simultaneously, we already saw that Finn had killed the grabber and was like making his way out of the house. So it's just like, there is no tension here. We already know that everything is fine. So again, like, that's what I mean. Like, when I say that, like, Scott Derrickson improved upon character, but he literally threw everything else out the window, like, in spite of it. Which it's like, balance them. I don't know what else to say, but
I agree. I also feel like I got a feel for, again, what they were going for when James Ransone's character Max, another Max. We had Max with I Know What You Did Last Summer, also Johnny Galecki. Could have used him in this movie, but anyway, James Ransone opens the door. And I remember, as it was going on, and we got the moment where he killed his own brother and everything. I was just like, "Oh, Misery!" Annie Wilkes with the shotgun, with, the discovery of James
I was getting a lot of Misery
basement,
from this too, but like Misery light, you know.
And that's why with something like Fresh, which I will not go into, if you want to know, join Zach's Patreon and watch us review that.
Oh, thank you.
But with that movie, it went in a lot of different directions that I did not see coming, and it kept doing it to me. It kept doing things that made me go, "Oh my God!" And I could feel this movie trying that, but it just did not work. And another thing, okay, how am I going to say this? Okay, I did not have fun with this movie. Now, I understand there is an entire subgenre of horror that exists not for us to have fun with it, not for us to take a ride, not for us to be going through the spook house or, you know, like whatever. It's about, it can be about tragedy, or it can be about, you know, like, you know, or even just like brutality or something like that. And there are definitely those movies that I adore and that I do own and that I will watch over and over and over again. I remember hearing, and I won't go into it too much, but I remember hearing when Hereditary first came on the scene, a very helpful review from Clark Wolf. She said, I liked it a lot. I did not have any fun. If you're looking for a horror movie to have fun with, don't walk into this thinking like, you know, because she talked about like, you know, the ads for it, like saying the quote from one critic's review saying like, you know, not since Exorcist. And it says that was a mistake because people are going to go in expecting to see The Exorcist. And The Exorcist, it's not like it's fun, but it's thrilling, you know? And Hereditary is very different. I don't get thrills watching that movie, but I do adore it. I adore, you know, the frankness, and I adore the terror, like the kind of like interpersonal terror within like a family unit, you know, not, you know, not knowing like what, you know, they're what they're in for. With this movie, I thought like, I feel like, but I remember people criticizing Hereditary for being made by people who don't know how to make a proper horror movie, and I took issue with that. This movie, I don't think Scott Derrickson can't make a proper horror movie, but I don't think he did. I feel like it didn't know enough what it wanted to put me through. Because even the opening for like the first 10 minutes, I want to say, maybe, I didn't check my watch or anything, but it all seemed very, very kind of like lighthearted children in summer, you know, like the ball game with Bruce beating the kid Finney and everything, and I was just like, and I just turned to my friend who I went to go see it with, and I asked, did we walk in the right theater? Because I don't, it's the black phone, and I'm saying, okay, I don't have a problem with it, but I hope that we get to a mood at some point. It just kind of feels like, oh, poor kid, and, you know, like all this and everything like that.
Well, I'm gonna interject because
Go for it.
I mean, I understand what you mean by you didn't have fun, but I wouldn't say that this is completely devoid of fun, because I think that there was definitely moments in this that were, you know, very evocative of, you know, horror movies where it's just like, oh, that, like, I'm enjoying this, you know, particularly with Gwen, with her visions or her dreams or whatever. Like, I loved when she's kind of like thrust into them, but she's interacting with her dreams in a way, like she's getting into the police car with the one kid, Vance, and then it's like none of it, like it's a dream, like nothing makes any sense. So like there's no end or beginning. We're just kind of like going through, and she's, you know, taking liberties along with it, or just however the characters are, to like, you know, get out and find the address. I liked sort of, I mean, this is maybe more so mixed, but I did appreciate seeing sort of like the style, like that Super 8 video that they kind of took from Sinister to kind of like make these dream sequences. I felt like it didn't really necessarily make sense. Like it didn't work the same way that it did there, but it was still nice to see it because it did add some texture to the movie. Like with Sinister, obviously it made sense because those were videos that, you know, were being recorded and watched by the characters. Here it just felt like it had just become like sort of like this unique flavor to Scott Derrickson that we're gonna like, you know, use. But I wouldn't say that I didn't have fun at any point during the movie. Like, it's definitely like more serious in tone, but I was enjoying it. And especially, like, you know, when you talk about the opening and just sort of like kids being kids and baseball games, I didn't have any misgivings or just like confusion about what movie I saw. I saw that this is a movie that's setting up its characters. It's setting up a world, an environment that that these kids inhabit, and it's going to be corrupted by this presence, the Grabber. And so that's why like the first part of the movie worked really well for me, because I was seeing like these kids at school and just like the daily horrors that they have to deal with, you know, even outside of the prospect of the Grabber being there, of just like the bullying and the child abuse, that by the time the Grabber actually showed up, I almost like mentally I was just thinking like the Grabber's not even like the biggest villain of the story. Just in terms of like of the horror that was going on. And what I think would have worked a lot better, because we see that his friend Robin, who is the child who was taken before Finn, it was almost like, you know, it happened so quickly where, you know, he was abducted and then it was just like almost like the next few days and then Finn was. What I would have liked to see is for Finn and Gwen to actually be like, you know what, like, we're going to find our friend, because like the police, and I love this with like the Gwen character where she basically like, I forget like what expletive she used when she's just sitting in the principal's office and she's just like cursing. She's like, what, you think I'm the fucking Grabber? Like an 8-year-old girl? Fuck you. Which is always fun to see children swearing. But yeah, what I would have liked to see is for those two characters to kind of just be like, we're, you know, like the police are useless. Like we're going to find Robin on our own, and whether or not like they were already too late in finding him or whatever, but that could have been sort of the reason that Finn gets grabbed or, you know, captured by the Grabber, is because he went like poking his nose around in a scenario like that. Would have made a lot more sense. It would have felt less contrived than Finn just being the next victim in line to getting kidnapped, because like I said, it didn't really make any sense. Like it almost undermined his character that he would be like naive enough to just like allow that to happen to him. That I would have rather, you know, they almost like a Rear Window thing, or just they were like spying on houses and then for some reason like Gwen didn't know the location of where Finn was, so it was just sort of like her just, you know, using her shine, as it were, to kind of figure it out. And what also would have been good, just because the connection between those two characters was so great, the black phone could have been like sort of like a conduit between those two characters, where it's just like she didn't know where he was and he didn't know where he was, but it was just like, you know, we don't need to see. I mean, it was cool that we saw like the past victims and all that, and I think that was sort of like another holdover from Sinister, because we did see like the former dead kids in that movie, which I don't think worked as successfully as it did here. I think they did it much better in the black phone. But yeah, like allow that phone to be kind of a way that, you know, he can have that connection to his sister, and the rest of the movie could have been almost like, you know, if you're really wanting to be a Silence of the Lambs and having this sort of this investigation of just being like, yeah, the time is ticking, we got to find Finn, because like this guy's going to kill him.
Yeah, I definitely agree with your inclination to lean into the detective work of it all, because actually Gwen's character was the one who I wanted to follow. Everything about her was interesting to me. It was interesting, like her religiosity and yet her own kind of like epiphany about it. Like, if I keep asking for things and you just keep letting bad things happen, then are you even there, kind of thing. Her ability to be victimized by her father in such a violent and humiliating way, but then to take charge of the room with the detectives when they're not giving her the answers that she wants to hear. I just thought, like, okay, this kid, and Robin also, like after his confrontation in the bathroom in the public boys room at the school with the bullies who want to take Finney apart, and then he walks in and just kind of says, you can leave now, and after he's washing his hands and shit, and I'm just kind of like, that kid's my hero too. It would have been nice if if we could have seen something else. I mean, maybe they were limited by Joe Hill's short story, which the movie's based on. The screenplay was written by Scott Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill. I'd really be interested to read the short story and see if what elements were interwoven by the screenwriters and originated with their, you know, ideas. Like, well, what if, you know, like, is his sister even there? Is she psychic? Like, how much of a part does she play? Because she really was the one who I wanted to follow. But even it did not escape, and I'd hate to bring this up, but it did not escape my attention while I was watching this, that even though there was that first kid who, what was his name, Mike, I think, who eventually gets on the black phone and like appears. No, the first kid in the long line of all of them, like the original kid, because there were more than.
Bruce was the first one that came on the phone, but there's the paper boy. I forget his name.
Yeah, the paper boy. I think it was Mike. But let's call him Mike for the sake of this pod. So even though like he was, you know, like the first kid, like, you know, like a white kid, the two kids that we were introduced to, it did not escape my attention that they were children of color who were killed, who are now working to save this white kid. And I was just, I don't know, it just kind of bothered me. I immediately started sitting there like what? Okay, so the tough kid, the Latino kid who can handle himself and who, you know, like has the gravitas that this 42-year-old man envies. I'm pointing to myself. This 42-year-old man wishes I could be that assertive, and, you know, now I'll probably reach in my back pocket if I ever need it to, you know, to be threatening to someone who I think, you know, is threatening somebody I care about or whatever. I might just do that anyway. But anyway, has like also, in my eyes, been discredited in the fact that, because we don't even see what transpires between him and the grabber and how he gets abducted. So, but he was another one who seemed so much smarter than someone who would approach a van like that, especially when, again, like one child has already been abducted, poor Bruce. And I don't know, it's so depends on me to just kind of buy into the premise of the grabber and his ability to ensnare these kids. And
that's why we never like it always cuts away. The only time we see it happen is with Finney, and it was just like, it was so quick. It just like, it wasn't important enough to the script. I do want to say though, because it just seems like, and I'm not saying that you're anti-Finn, but it just seems like you're maybe not as on board with him. But because it was established in that scene, and I might be misremembering it, but, you know, because he had that conversation with Robin, and Robin, I think, said something about just like his, you know, his strength might have been like more so just like his emotions, or just like, you know, the way he cares about people. And I you know, I think that's eventually, like, that's why he succeeded in the end where the others didn't. Obviously he had their help, which was a little contrived, and also because there is a line that Robin says to Finn in that bathroom scene where he's just like, one of these days you're gonna have to stand up for yourself. And I knew when he said that, it's just like, well, you know, obviously it's gonna be to the grabber. But then it bothered me when he said that again, like as like ghost Robin over the phone, because it's just like, why are you just reminding us? It's just like, this should be subtext. It shouldn't be like repeated text. And it was like, that kind of bothered me. It just felt like I was watching something that was like trying so hard to be intelligent. And it was intelligent, but it was just like pandering to you know, kind of like the dumbing itself down for, you know, for anyone. And there were certain things like the whole time, because there were some surprises for me, because I felt like when he said to him, this is what you're going to do, you're going to take the receiver of the phone and you're going to pack it with dirt and you're going to use that as a weapon. And all I could think of is just like, why do you need to pack the phone with dirt? You've got the grate off of the window, which could do a lot of damage if you swing it into him. You've got the cover for the toilet tank. That can fucking concuss someone. Really, like, there's all these implements that he has. Like, he doesn't have to just depend on this one thing. But then, of course, when we get to the end and just see how everything sort of like comes to fruition, it's like this game of like dominoes or whatever, just like how everything lines up. Which, I mean, like, because the window grate, or, you know, the bars did kind of come back into play because he put it in that the pit, which is how the grabber, like, I don't know if he broke his foot or like got it trapped in there, but I was just like, okay, I like that because I didn't see that coming. So it worked for me. But at the same time, it's almost like, okay, you're getting all this like supernatural help to just like give you these messages, and without really like thinking, you're just like setting things up and it's all working out in your favor. Like it's almost like these dead kids have this foresight to know what you have to do to get out of it. So that in a way also kind of undermines Finney's abilities, but I still like that he was able to do things like, he got the meat, like the steak at the end, and used it to distract the dog. Like there were certain things like that I'm like, okay, I like that. And just seeing his struggle and how he did use certain things to his advantage that he didn't necessarily know about. One thing I did want to point out too, which I thought was funny, because when we talked about Valentine way back in our second episode, how Marley Shelton's character getting out of the shower and all the water not working in the apartment, and after trying to find like a bottle of water in the fridge and nothing, reasons to open the toilet seat and dunk her head in nasty toilet water rather than taking the top off of the tank and using it there. But we see Finn, who's so resourceful. He knows like, okay, I need to hydrate myself. I'm going to take the top off the tank and drink that water because that's clean water at least. And just like the whole thing of just taking the dirt and putting it in the toilet bowl to like making sure that like nothing seems off when the guy does come back down there. That was all really smart. Like those are all qualities that I want to see in a final person. So I for me personally, while I do enjoy following Gwen's story, to me this is Finn's movie, and I'm with Finn the entire time, because when it came down to it, Gwen's, I mean, she definitely like led the police to the right vicinity, but she didn't actually lead them to Finn. Finn did it on his own with some supernatural help. So that's why for me, this is his story.
Yeah, it's not that I'm anti-Finney. I'm anti the way his whole storyline was handled. You said something earlier about how you never really felt or believed that he was in danger. Yeah. And for me, this is like kind of like the overarching problem that I have with the threat or the absence of a threat. It's like I felt like Scott Derrickson wanted to take certain elements of this story and wanted to use them, things that are very, very upsetting and things that are very, very, like live in the shadows. We don't like to talk about them, kind of thing. But I also felt him afraid. And I don't know what the solution is. I think it's just a defter hand that knows how to handle it, because I agree with you to a point about the Grabber not being a threat to Finney, because days are going by and the Grabber never really once tries aggressively to do anything. He just kind of stands there and says gross things and alludes to like what his intentions are and everything like that in lines that I will not repeat. And it's gross, but the thing is, I'm right there with you, just thinking like, but Finney's going to be fun. Like Finney is full on, like going day after day after day after day, like being weary of like the food that he's being served and faking being asleep and doing it unsuccessfully, and then digging holes and being able to conceal them, and even like breaking that grate off of the window successfully. I mean, it wasn't successful because he wanted to get out the window, but, he still got something that he could use. And I just kept seeing him inching his way toward winning and toward, like, maybe devising a plan eventually, even if step by step he didn't succeed at everything he was doing. And I just thought, okay, in real life, horrible things would have happened to this kid by now. Unspeakable things that I'm not going to speak of. And I don't need to see those things, because I don't find those things palatable either. I don't want to see that movie. But I just wish it could have, again, the deft hand of a filmmaker who knows how to really let that threat exist and not just get talked about, and also who can make it such an extremely terrorizing situation for the kid that I need the black phone to exist. It seemed more like an interesting idea. I wonder how it reads in the short story, him talking to the ghost and everything like that, but it just felt convenient, and again,
I agree.
felt like a way, and just
same
felt
thing
like a
but
way
different,
to,
you know.
yeah. But again, just felt like a way to kind of like tell a story of a child being abducted by an adult predator who we don't want to tell that story though, so let's find a way to get him out of it.
The black
it felt too consistent.
Itself.
Or not consistent.
The black phone itself was very
convenient. That's
Deus Ex Machina in a way, because they're just like, without that, it's just like, you know, he doesn't succeed. And there was all this other shit that, you know, with the Grabber, where it's just like he apparently can hear it, or they're saying he can hear it, but he chooses to believe that it doesn't exist. Like they're trying to like kind of put little like flecks of just sort of things about this character, which it just it doesn't come to fruition. None of it ever makes any sense or builds this story behind him or this backstory. And I think that in the way in which they kind of completely neuter the Grabber is when one of the kids, I forget which one it was, but they say he's not doing anything because you won't play his game. He won't kill you because you won't play his game. So it's almost like he's a very passive villain, because he's just waiting upstairs. He's not doing anything. He's waiting upstairs for Finn to like go upstairs so he can do what he needs to do. So it's like Finn can just survive the movie by biding his time, because, you know, eventually, you know, maybe they do, like the police do close in on that address, and who knows what happens, but then they kind of, you know, they look into who owns the house. And then, I mean, the fact that they even went there without a warrant, like their continuity and all that, like we won't even get into. But, you know, it just seemed like eventually, if he had just bided his time, who knows, like the strength of that window. Like he said that the room was soundproofed, so that might be like really thick glass. Who knows? But I mean, even after he got the grate off, he could have like thrown bottles through the window if they would shatter that, and then like, you know, have that ability to scream out. But I will say, because we talked about Sinister and just how it seemed like all this noise and shit was going on in that house night after night, and the family just slept through everything. And at least that is addressed in this movie when he says, oh, don't, you know, you can scream all you want, but I've soundproofed this room. So
he won't hear you.
Which even then I feel like, well, you've already broken through the wall behind the freezer. So there's going to be like the foundation of this house has been cracked. There's got to be some noise, but they kind of, again, that's another thing. They're like, well, my brother's an idiot, but you know, and again, that's why I should have gone back to like the brother lived across the street, you know, like why, you know, if you're planning to pull like a successful bait and switch, you know, do things that way. Because I think like by the time that we do hear the dog barking and then James Ransone being like, what's going on? He's just like, nothing, Max, go back to bed. It's just like, oh, okay, so he was underneath the house. And there's this bit when he's sitting, like right before he does go downstairs and finds Finn, and he's like looking at the map after doing like his, you know, 17th million rail, and he's like looking at it deep into the map, and then he's like, he figured it out. He cracked the code. He knows that the Grabber must be downstairs because of reasons, which we never find out. Right. And that's almost like a punchline, because he's like, you need to call the police. And he's like, well, don't you want to hear about how I figured out that you were down here? And then that's when like, so it's like, why waste time with shit like that when, you know, you could be doing all this other stuff. So I don't know. I feel like we're being negative, like we're like maybe what.
Well, I have a lot of negative things to say about this movie. Sorry.
Well, do you have any positive things to say?
Well, I have one big negative thing I have to address, but let me see.
Well, let's get the negative out, and then we'll heal. Well,
because we were also alluding to like how what this movie is kind of like borrowed from Silence of the Lambs, and there was one thing that I felt like it borrowed and even doubled down on for the worse from Silence of the Lambs. I remember I wasn't really a party to the conversation when Silence of the Lambs got released in 91, right?
Yeah.
In 91. I was 11 years old, so I wasn't, having big conversations about Silence of the Lambs then. But in retrospect, I remember hearing about like a lot of the controversy surrounding Ted Levine's portrayal of Buffalo Bill. People misinterpreted the character, thinking he was a gay male who was craving a sex change, when if he were gay, he would be killing men and not women. And Ted Levine publicly apologized and, prostrated himself before the public, for getting it so wrong, which I never thought he should do, because I felt like he got it so right, and it's their fault because they misinterpreted it. But anyway, and Jonathan Demme too publicly apologized for, a negative portrayal, because there was so little representation at the time too. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I'm watching this movie, and I'm watching Ethan Hawke walk in with that tray over and over again, or whatever, and I felt like, to say he was mincing is to exaggerate, but not that much. And there was something kind of pronounced about his delivery that made me think, oh, effeminate man being portrayed on screen as a predator, being portrayed as creepy, being portrayed as malicious. And it really bothered me, because I kind of felt like, it's now more than 20 years since The Silence of the Lambs, and we haven't moved past 30 this. Past 30. I can't do math. Okay, it's more than 30 years, even more so now. Mm-hmm. And we haven't moved past this. And the thing is, everything that people accused Jonathan Demme and Ted Levine of doing in Silence of the Lambs, which I never agreed with, and I still don't when I watch the movie, I don't feel it. That's just me. With this movie, I felt it. I felt like, did we have to make this choice? Did we have to? I understand not everything has to be representation or anything like that, but it just kind of felt unmindful to have an actor who identifies as heterosexual playing a child predator who kidnaps only boys, and to give him an affectation that made him somewhat, like maybe Bugs Bunny level effeminate, shall we say. And it was one more thing that just like stuck in my craw that I couldn't like get over, because it felt like maybe if they paid more attention to the threat, the way we've been discussing it, because it just bothered me. It made me think, like, does Scott Derrickson think he has created a threat by putting a man like that on screen, who's saying the lines he's saying to a child he's abducted? Like, it felt like kind of cheap and kind of half-assed. That was one component I wanted to address. Mm-hmm. It just bothered me. Yeah. And it's a big part of why I wouldn't like to return to this movie, because I don't need that in my life. Yeah. Does that make sense? Again, like, it's such a non-character to me that I didn't even really pick up on certain, like, I didn't interpret it in those ways. I just saw like, more so just like, here's the grabber, and we have Ethan Hawke playing him, and it was funny because like Ethan Hawke is credited or he's like credited as like and Ethan Hawke. So I mean that should already tell you, like, his role is more so just kind of like ceremonious in this movie. That he is in it so little that it just kind of like, he shows up, he does his thing, he puts like a little flair on it. That's what I saw it as. I wasn't reading into it in the same way that you were. I was more so in the way, and I thought, again, like, bringing it back to Mason Thames, because there's this one of the scenes between him, one of the few scenes where Ethan Hawke comes down, and he says this because I think it's when he wakes up and he's sitting in the corner in the dark, watching him, and he's just like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm just watching you. And then he leaves, and then it's just like he's kind of like very stoic in this moment, but then as soon as like the door closes and he's in there alone again, he sort of like he like winces and draws. He's just like, then taking it in. It's just like, oh, like that's way too unsettling. So I think that Ethan Hawke does a successful job in being an unsettling villain, but he's never scary. Sure. He's never menacing. He's never
violent, even when he is violent. I never feel like you're like it's the with as much ease as he's taken out by this 10-year-old, 12-year, however old he is, kid. I was just kind of like, that's it.
13.
Like that's all it took. Like it was just like, okay. I almost would have preferred if he had taken the toilet tank and just beat him over the head with it.
Right. But also, how did he abduct all those other boys and like kill them successfully, and then take? I mean, I guess that's the whole idea of it. Again, is that like potentially like on the surface of it, the one who you would assume is the weakest or the most passive of all of the boys that he's abducted is the one who gets built up, by all the ones who have come before. But I don't. That's another story where I'm just kind of like, really? Like, I mean, like his sister's the one with the superpowers, and she doesn't even get to really.
No, but I mean,
anything.
like they both have powers, because his power is that he hears the phone as well. So it's just they've inherited this from their mother, and her gift might be a little stronger, but he still has it as well, and that's in the way that, because it's just like. No, none of the other, because even the kids say to it on the when they're talking on the phone, because he says, "Did you hear the phone too?" And they're like, "The phone rang when we were here, but we didn't hear it like you did." And that's when they said like he hears it as well, but he wants to believe that it's not there. So that's what I got out of it, is that it was set up that they both have this gift. She's a little more tuned into hers than he is, but that's sort of like where he's coming in and just like it's recognizing, okay, maybe I'm not this tough guy who's gonna defend myself against these bullies, even though Bruce says at the beginning it's just like, you've got a good arm, or whatever, which is like that the good arm is what he's gonna use to like tug on that telephone wire and choke out Ethan Hawke in the end. But it was more just like, as much as I say like he did have a lot of help from these kids, he was able to tune into his gift in order to allow that to happen for him.
I'm really glad I'm talking about this movie with you right now, then, because I to be honest, I don't do this in movies often, and I almost fell asleep twice, and I don't remember when it happened. But while it was going, and while I was like kind of dozing and going, wake up. I didn't fall asleep, but I could feel myself dozing. That it must have been at the point that you're talking about right now, where he's on the phone and he finds out that he can hear it in a way that they couldn't, because I don't remember that at all, and that actually explains that they're like a Luke and Leia of their neighborhood, with the Force and everything like that. I mean,
well, I'd like to thank you for showing up to this podcast finally, but.
No, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Like, I mean, because I just thought it was just like a thing, and I thought like all of them could hear it because they were all in the same predicament, and I just thought it was like this, moody, movie device thing that was kind of like sloppily handled. And even though it's not as sloppily handled as I was thinking. Now, I mean, you attributing his ability to hear through the phone to his direct bloodline to his mother and her gifts, that's okay. That's interesting. That's more. It makes it all feel a little less scattered, but I did not. I still think
that it's incredibly scattered, but that's the reason that you didn't pick up on that is because they weren't honing in on that. That's what they should have been focusing on, and they didn't. And they should have been focusing on making the Grabber more of a threat. I don't know if you've heard about this, but there's already buzz about a sequel.
Jesus.
You don't like the sound? Because I think that, like, hear me out. If they are going to make a sequel,
go for it.
This is where you can then make a successful movie that's probably even better than this one by taking these characters who've already established. Because I feel like, where this movie is successful is kind of the ways that it is kind of being evocative of like Stephen King, of this world building with these children and everything. And now that you've kind of established that they have this gift, they have this shine, we'll just call it the shine, of just kind of going forward, and like now here we are, and you have these kids, and they can do what I wanted them to do in this movie, which was like be that like Stranger Things kid team of just solving these murders and everything. And you know what? Even if like you want to continue working with Ethan Hawke, like I don't want to see the Grabber come back. I don't need to see a return of his character, but have Ethan Hawke come back and play another villain. You know, we didn't even really see his face in this, so it's and we didn't really hear his natural voice. So you could have Ethan Hawke come back and play someone else, and that could just be a series of these movies where just like every time it's like Ethan Hawke playing a new heavy and these kids like, we're gonna take him down. And I want to see that because like I said, the movie was successful in these characters. That was the strength of the movie. And if you're gonna make obviously don't call it the Black Phone 2, like just be done with the Black Phone, but like, you know, find some other connective tissue,
like
and just like
Doctor Sleep is to The Shining,
exactly,
like, a sequel without being a sequel in the name.
Yeah, and just, you know, continue on with these characters, because I think that, you know, like incredible actors, these two, and just and incredible characters, and performed and written and directed. You know, as much as, you know, we have other criticisms for, you know, Scott Derrickson in this, like that is where he succeeded. And if they are doing the sequel, and who knows, maybe that's just Jason Blum, because, you know, the second, you know, he earns like a little bit more money than he expected on a movie, he just kind of like goes crazy. And it's just like, we're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep making these movies. So hopefully someone in that room has enough sense to be like, calm down. We're going to make another movie. But like have someone smart come in and be like, this is what worked. This is what didn't. And, you know, like just certain aspects. So I don't know who that would be, because I don't know. I mean, I definitely, because we talked about this during the Sinister podcast of just Jason Blum for the marketing of that movie being like, no, we got to show this jump scare in the trailer because it's going to work. It's going to get butts in seats. And Scott Derrickson was just like, well, I don't want to, like, that's such a big moment for the movie. I don't want to reveal it in the trailer. And Jason Blum's reasoning was that, well, don't worry about it, because most of the time, or just like, you know, throughout a percentage, people usually forget what they see in the trailer when they're watching the movie. And it's just like, is that why you revealed the like Michael Myers closet scene in Halloween 2018, which everybody saw coming? Like, don't, like, nobody should listen to Jason Blum. Like, clearly he's a successful producer, and, you know, I would never take that away from him.
But sometimes in spite of his decisions, he's successful. Yes,
it's true. I mean, because if you look at Blumhouse, I'd say that like probably like 10% or less of their movies are actually good. And I'd say, personally, I'd say that this one falls on the good end. Like, you know that like every Blumhouse movie that comes out now for the next 3 years is going to say, from the people who brought you The Black Phone, because this movie made money. So he's going to capitalize on the success of this movie. So it's, you know, he did well in that regard. But, you know, when you compare that to your Freakies and your fire starters and, you know, all that stuff, it's just like, you know, okay, are you really that successful, or you're making good decisions?
Aw, well, we'll talk more about Freaky if we ever do that pod. But no, but in terms of it did like scroll across my mind as I was like making my way down the steps after the lights came up, because I sit through end credits. It's what I do, and
there was no post-credit scene.
No, there was not. But as I was making my way down, I was just I don't just do it for that. I do it to kind of digest what I just watched, for better or worse. To just kind of like, I like hearing the music. I like seeing how many people worked on it. I like paying, you know, homage to that. But it occurred to me, I was just kind of like, okay, like the two of the heaviest hitters, and certainly the ones that I've been seeing their movies, you know, their horror movies that they've been releasing thus far this year, have been Blumhouse and A24. Mm-hmm. If I had to put my money on the next movie I saw, like let's say two movies from one movie from each production company were released in the same weekend, which one would I prioritize? And for me, even though it's not like every time I see an A24 movie I think it's perfection, I do have to say the issues I take with it tend to be more minor. And the Blumhouse, it's more like a gamble. It is like rolling dice. It is kind of like, oh, that was great, I'm really, really glad I saw that. Or, what the fuck were they thinking? God damn it, Jason Blum, you know, or somewhere in between, you know, like a grayer area. But I don't think I've had that with A24 yet.
Well, the next A24 movie that comes out, as far as I know, is Bodies, 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 I don't know if you saw a trailer for that. It's
I did.
It looks like it's like a whodunit. Like it looks really fun. It's got Pete Davidson in it. And then the next Blumhouse, I think, is Halloween Ends. And I mean, we're gonna be doing the 3 Blumhouse Halloween movies coming up here with ending with Halloween Ends. So we'll get into that here. But I mean, like right now, I'm more interested to see Bodies. I want to see some brand new IP. So I would be on board for A24. And I agree with what you say. Like A24 is they're weird movies. Like, you know, sometimes they do things that work. Sometimes they do things that don't work, but I mean, like, it always has its fans. Whereas I feel like Blumhouse, if it's not perfection or near perfection, it's trash. We'll say, like, it's
just wrath of the internet.
If it's not like a 7 out of 10 or higher, it's like a 1 or a 2, and that's what I've noticed. Like, I haven't heard anything good about Firestarter. I didn't see it yet. I will see it at some point.
I will too.
I mean, I'm not like a huge fan of like remakes in 2022 at this point. I
liked the original when I was a kid. I liked the Drew Barrymore movie. I mean, I haven't seen it since I was a kid, but I thought, it was like if Carrie could like make things set on fire just spontaneously, except it's a little girl. And even though there was tons of anguish, and I feel like all Drew Barrymore did was cry in that movie, there was something interesting about it. I love that, if we ever do a pod, we'll talk about that one. But as far as the A24 like Blumhouse thing, A24, I think it's also just the chances they take, or that they allow their filmmakers to take, pay off more often for me than the chances Blumhouse allows their filmmakers to take. I also don't know how much space Blumhouse grants their filmmakers. I feel like it depends. I feel like some directors get much more freedom than others, and I feel like, watching Black Christmas 2019.
I mean, I could say something, but I don't know, like how well it would go over. But I mean, like, I miss Dimension Films. I don't care for the people behind it, but I mean, especially outside of other aspects of what that turned out to be, but even just like what we've learned about in production things, like especially with Cursed, and just like how like the abuse of just the power of the filmmakers themselves, of just being the producers, and how they would take advantage and gaslight the creative people behind those movies. But I mean, I look at Dimension and I'm just like, I mean, there was a lot of stinkers in there for sure, but for them, it gave us Scream. It gave us the first 4 Scream movies, The Faculty, all these other things. So I feel like even with those movies, like if they weren't always successful, they had a very consistent flavor to them. Whereas I feel like Blumhouse is all over the place. It's never the same thing, not even in terms of like quality, but like tone. It's just like everything's all over the place. Whereas I feel like at least
should be.
I was just gonna say, at least A24 is like they're consistent. I feel like they're starting to like take a little like more mainstream risks, which I like. Because that's if anything, that's just gonna put them more on the map and be more in contention with Blumhouse. But no, go ahead with what I interrupted you. Sorry.
No, it's okay. And I still get a sense that, like, again, the films made through A24 Studio are made by filmmakers, not by committee. And therefore, you're going to, even if you don't like it, you're getting, or you feel like you're getting something that is a cohesive vision out of a collaborative, project that is worked on by people who love film and who think about what it is like to be an audience member carried through this world that they've developed for you. And I think that's the biggest thing for me with Black Phone is, I already said it a little bit in the beginning, but I think ultimately there are things, and we'll get into it because I do want to say some positive things. I don't have a lot, but I have a few. And I've already said some, but I remember again, like it just felt like a series of ideas where I'm like, oh, I see where that's okay. I get where you're going, and like, ooh, I like this kid, you know, or whatever. And then it just kept jumping around. There was no, it didn't feel like a uniform story, and it also didn't even feel like an adeptly handled story that has turns and twists and things like that. I will take either of those, and I'll take anything in between. I love things that crush genre or subgenre, or that subvert my expectations, or that even try my patience. There's such a thing as like sitting in an audience watching something that is so subjective. You have a completely different experience than the person sitting next to you and the person sitting next to them. You could all feel like you're seeing three different things go on, and I adore that. I feel like I got it. I feel like while I was moving through this movie, I'm just kind of like, yeah, I see what you're going for. I get it. I get it. That said, one ambiguous thing that I thought worked to the film's benefit, or maybe even just to the end of the film, to the benefit of the ending, was the contrite, apologetic, teary-eyed father appearing on the scene and literally falling to his knees before his children and showing like kind of unbridled concern for their well-being for the first time that I kind of believed, and apologizing for all that he's done, you know, doing everything that I guess you would want to hear. And I just loved the children's kind of what's the word I'm looking for? The kind of ambivalence. Like they just seemed to kind of take it in. They didn't.
There was a lot of apathy for his emotions at that point. It's just like, well,
yes.
You know, like we don't give a shit about how you're feeling right now because
exactly.
we hadn't just watched like a 90-minute movie of like the concerned parent at home, and just like we hardly even really checked in on him during any of the time that Finn was abducted.
Right.
And if we did, it was just sort of like, you know, like very much like in the periphery of the movie. So yeah, definitely what I felt is just like what I was reading from them in that moment. It's just like, so what? Like, we still don't, like, you haven't redeemed yourself. You're like, you're still a piece of shit. And I was almost hoping that like someone was going to come in and just be like, is this your father? And they'd be like, yeah. And they're like, sir, we're taking your kids into, you know, like protective, custody or something. And just, you know, they told us about how you treated them, or, you know, things like that.
Yeah.
Of course, this is no excuse, because this movie does take place in 1978. So these are different times, but it doesn't change the gravity of you know, the child abuse that was going on in that home. If they do make a sequel, and what I hope they don't, or just like what I just thought of is Nightmare on Elm Street 4 to 5 with Alice's father.
I was just gonna say
being the abusive alcoholic in Dream Master, and then you know, having sobered up and being this like doting father in the Dream Child for like the 2 minutes of screen time he has in that. I don't remember much about the Nightmare movies, but I remember that.
Okay, I mean, we can get into that when we discuss the Nightmare movies, but I don't need that, because I feel like the abuse, what he does actually kind of like, you know, doubles down and, you know, completely. I mean, I don't need a redemption arc for that character. I don't mind if we do follow the two kids in a sequel, and we get to see them older and get to see them stronger and everything like that, because now obviously Finney has, you know, confronted darkness in theory, and has overcome and realized he is a tough kid. He can fight back. He can stand up for himself. And Gwen has found empowerment in the world of adults when she told those cops, you know, like whatever expletives she used, and like told them to go fuck themselves. That would have been the line if I would have written it down, but I was, you know, in theater and I wasn't taking notes. But that would have been my line at the top of this episode.
At the opening,
But and I couldn't find it anywhere, and there's no clips because it's in the theater, it just opened. But anyway, what I have to say is if they can both kind of like move into their power to the point where I don't need them to even really have a relationship beyond just kind of like a functioning daily courtesy relationship with their father. Just like, thanks for my lunch, Dad. Just I don't need to see reconciliation.
Yeah.
I don't, because that would spoil the ending.
Yeah,
that we got
he
with
doesn't
this movie
deserve he doesn't deserve a redemption arc as
Exactly.
far as I'm concerned. But how about this for a sequel? They both are sent off to summer camp, you know, for the season. And whatever happens is like there, you know, like there's
Camp Crystal Lake.
Sure. The timeline might like 1980. You know?
Oh my God! You know what? I would actually be really, really excited about that because one of my favored Friday the 13th movies is 7 with Tina, and I just love watching her, you know, against Jason.
I was even thinking of like the Addams Family too, where they send Wednesday and Pugsley off to summer camp. But just as a way to just like remove him from the story, even if because Jeremy Davies, who plays him, like he's a great actor, and you know we've seen him in everything. He's a terrific character actor. So I'm just not saying that he needs to be like out of the movie entirely, but if he's just kind of like, you know, we see him like saying like sending them off to summer camp or whatever, and it's just like, good. We know that they're safe, at least from him.
Yeah.
You know, like during the summer.
All I need from him is like passivity and like compliance. Like because that's another thing I did think as I was leaving the movie. I was just like, on one hand, there was a part of me that wanted them to turn to the cops and be like, take this man away. Look at my back. He did that. Take him away. But then I thought, realistically, if they did that, times being what they were, and I think this still happens now, chances are they're going to be separated and go into foster care, and you know, and they might lose each other like in the system. And granted, that, you know, it's like
that was another thing that
years.
like did occur to me during this, because it's just like sort of like Finn's passivity, as you called it, of just like watching everything. It's almost like it's better to not intervene because he's just trying to, like, you know, thinking about the best scenario for the two of them. And you know, that's what I was kind of reading it as. So I didn't think that it was like him. I mean, obviously there was the portion of like, you need to stand up for yourself and all that. So you know, I feel like in that way, like that arc of just like the abusive father was never really resolved, unless they were trying to, you know, make us feel sorry for him, which I didn't, because like I said, even they didn't give a shit about his feelings at the end. There was almost just like, go get out of here, you slug.
Well, there's another thing I love. But another thing I loved about it is, like, when you're in abusive situations, or even in just abusive situations with people who are addicts, who are destructive, there is usually, if you get caught in a pattern with a person like that, the act of contrition usually follows something, you know, like really, really heinous, and like, oh, I'm so sorry. And this is how people get ensnared and things like that, because, oh, well, they feel bad, and I don't want to be a terrible person and judge them and think that, you know, like push them away because they need me. They need me to understand that they didn't mean it and all of that kind of thing. So I like the fact that, like, they didn't just go, screw you, old man, and kick him in the face. I love that they just kind of stood there, like, just kind of like, all right, whatever.
Or, you know, if the sequel, if they aren't, kind of, you know, sent off to summer camp, maybe they're sent off to live with an aunt or uncle, you know, like, and that's cool. That's the moving on from that character. Is like, he realized that he wasn't fit to be a parent, and then, you know, he just relinquished guardianship to someone more.
That might be a tall
suitable.
order, though. I'd prefer to just see him passive and just like, go
to just, summer camp.
You know, just be in the background. Just be in the background. Get your paycheck and and go to summer camp, or just go to your lives. Like, you know, like, let them be. I don't know what age the kids are really, but if they can play like 18 or, you know, like old age enough. I
don't know. I don't want to wait too long for a continuation of these characters. Like, I'd at least
kids
and,
grow,
you know, knowing
Blumhouse
too, like, you know, he's gonna strike it while the iron's hot. You know, it'll be like, but it's 2023.
But the movie is already, like, released like a year or so, like, later than it was supposed to.
It's true. Yeah, they're already much older.
Yeah,
but still,
so that'd be cool. I might give it a chance. I want to see a trailer. I want to know what is the premise this time, and is it going to be?
Are you
like
going
a
to
King
watch? Because
kind of
the entire episode you were saying that you would never watch this again, but then when I filled you in on what you had missed during your little snooze.
No, that's why I'm glad I had.
Yeah.
That's why I'm glad I had this conversation with you, because now I don't have to. No, I've said some positive things, or some things that affected me positively. I really don't think I have much more than that. I like what's his name? The Latino kid who teaches him to stand up for himself.
Robin.
Robin. I like Robin a
Ariana.
lot. Played by Miguel Cazares Mora, and yeah, and I love Gwen. And is there anything else?
And her little poncho too. I was thinking, like, if like we were ever to like theme our outfits for like the video podcast, I was just like, damn, I wish I had a poncho, because I would have worn that right now.
I used to. I don't think it would fit me anymore. I had one like when I was about these kids' age,
Yeah.
so yeah. But it was turquoise and gray. It was really pretty.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, aside from that, anything else about the movie? Because I can only like kind of like go in harder.
Yeah,
on some
no,
of the things
I
that
agree.
didn't
I
like, so
feel
I'm not
that we've pretty much covered everything that we could cover
Yeah.
about. I mean, just because it's a new release, we only saw it once, so other movies that we typically talk about in episodes, we've seen many times and have
yeah, we have a history with
and have gone over and found new things. So who knows? Maybe in the future there will be more to say about this, if there is a sequel ever, and we get to talk about that. But
right.
no, I stand by what I say. I think that it was a good movie. It wasn't. I think I don't want to say it's overrated or being overrated, because I think that all of the qualities that I find in it that do make it good are worthy of that critical praise. So again, it's just like just the mistakes that he made. It's just going back to the transition between. And he also did Doctor Strange, the first one, which I've never seen, but just in terms of like what was done better from Sinister and what was done worse, it was almost like he just swapped them out. So I think that there's definitely like there's a better movie that could have been made out of this, but for what we got, it was fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
And I would rather sit through Sinister again than this movie, actually. Like, okay. I mean, just in terms of mood and what he is able to kind of like evoke, like there were things that I guess worked for me that whet my appetite more as a moviegoer than this movie in particular. But I know there are a lot of people like giving already like very positive reviews for it, so it's working for some people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's got let me just quickly look on the IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, 7.4.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty high.
IMDb. And I think Sinister is a 6.4. I don't know. I'll look in a second here. But
Give it time.
On Rotten... Well, it's already had 10 years. Come on.
No, I mean this movie.
Oh, fair enough.
I don't think it'll stay there. I don't think the rating will stay there. Go on.
Well, it's got 85% of a tomato meter and 90% for an audience score. And I know people like, hate Rotten Tomatoes and all that, but I'd say I agree more with the IMDb score in this case. I could even go a little lower if I was to assign this an arbitrary number. I mean, maybe like a 70% or 71 if I'm being generous. But yeah, I'll see it again at some point, I'm sure. Yeah, let's get to the cherry picker. All right, first order of business. We got to pick a cherry on top.
My vote would go for Glenn, but if you have somebody you like
but
better.
I'm still gonna say Finn, and for the reasons I said, which I turned you around on him just because he does have the gift as well, and it's his story. We're seeing him kind of defeat the evil.
All right. I don't care enough to fight, so
all right, good. Finn is our cherry on top for the Black Phone. Now for the cherry picker from last week, where we asked you who deserves to die the most. And I know what you did last summer. That's my you voice.
That's your impression of me?
I picked Ray Bronson. I nominated Ray Bronson. You
blah, blah,
blah blah blah. That basically is what he is. Versus your nomination for Julie James. Across Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube, we've got a total of 345 votes for Ray versus 255 for Julie.
Oh, wow.
I really wanted you to win this one, actually, because I agree with everything you say, and like even that the bit that you brought up at the end with her and Anne Heche, when she's just like taking pity on her, just like, I'm here for the people and you are the people. I was listening back to it and I was just like cracking up because you're so right. She's such a bitch.
She is, but okay. What did
I did want to point out though that even though Ray got the majority, which is mostly based on the YouTube poll, Patreon and Instagram, the vote went towards Julie, because that was 11 versus 17 on Patreon and 50 versus 74 on Instagram for Julie. So. You've got some support in places like the Instagram one always throws me for a loop, because that's never it almost feels like it's the opposite of whatever it's going to be. Yeah, there's some defiant voters on Instagram. Wow. But let's see what are the people saying about these two. Space Mountain TV says, this is a very hard one, but I think I gotta go with Eddie, solely because of that "what are you waiting for" spin. I don't care if a kid won a contest. LOL. Alan Payne says Helen deserved better, which I assume that means that she deserved to be the final girl, which I agree with.
I agree as well.
Richard Kirby says Julie, horrible final girl. Helen should have been the final girl. We get so much more character development and empathy from her. Bluebox87 says, OMG, can I pick both? We all know Helen is so much Helen support here. We all know Helen is the only one that deserved to live, but I choose Ray. Dull, no personality, bad friend, bad boyfriend, bad acting. Desiree Perez says, hard one to choose because Julie was such a horrible friend / person to Helen. Like the scene in the car and she was telling her she missed her and they used to be best friends, and Julie tells her, whatever helps you sleep at night. Like, what? Bitch. LMAO. And Ray literally doesn't do anything. He's just worried about himself and seems like he doesn't care at all. So I'm so sorry, Zach. I'm going to go with Eddie.
Oh, good. Because he does something. He saves fucking Julie at the end. At least he does that. I mean, I'm not saying
especially after getting knocked off of the boat. At that point, I would have been like,
yeah, he comes
you know
back.
What? I'm just going to swim back to shore.
That would have been great. That would have made me like him. If he would have just given up after she made him get knocked off the boat, that would have been hilarious.
Yeah, I'm trying to help you here.
Yeah, all right.
Mandejo says Freddie Prinze Jr. could throw a soccer ball at my face and I'd ask him to do it again. Julie obviously wanted Helen to survive as she was more interesting, and let's face it, it's SMG. Hashtag not my final girl. Hashtag robbed. Hashtag run, bitch, run. Cody says Ray. with all the Y's in there. Anthony DePuzzo says, haha, damn. They both get so much hate, but I love them. I guess if I had to choose Ray, because he doesn't step up until the finale. My real choice is Max. Such a douche. I loved his death scene. Yes, Helen is better, but Julie James is an awesome final girl. I want a requel with her. What are you waiting for?
Oh my god. All right, I haven't seen the sequel yet, so we'll figure that out.
We'll see what happens.
But Max was on the roster for me. I didn't like his entitlement when he talked to Julie, just like, but I just want to talk to you or whatever the fuck.
It was kind of like,
no.
It was one of those like I'm a nice guy mentality.
Yeah, I hate that shit. Fucking hate that shit. So he was on the list.
He's a nice guy.
Sure. Yeah. In his mind.
DP says Helen is the final girl we deserved. Danielle D says I vote Barry, which I'm sorry, Danielle, but that is not
no, that's
a
not
nomination. We love Barry. Yeah. We love Bear.
I love him through Helen's eyes.
Yeah.
Anyway, go
on. Michael Ryan asks, "Is there a both button?" Marquise also says Barry with a laughing emoji. Somebody says Julie James. Heather Marie says Helen should have been the final girl. Julie was okay, just not my favorite. Barry was completely insufferable, and Ray was bland and boring. Hell, I was rooting for Elsa over Julie. So maybe if we did have a Julie versus Elsa showdown,
ooh,
maybe Julie still would have been killed.
Maybe.
I'm going to say this wrong. Anahi Vasquez? While everyone in the movie was completely ridiculous and all deserved to die, LOL, I'm going to go with Ray. Thomas Baker says, sorry, not sorry, Freddy. You're good at playing Fred Jones, but you're not as good playing Ray, so you've been gutted by the hook. And then Luke Does Stuff says, I chose Ray because he's just so boring. Like, he disappears throughout most of the movie. Like, I hate it. So very, very lively discussion there.
Yeah, a lot of people turned up for this one. Wow.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, you know, when you have a horrible final couple, there's only, and I was thinking, like, what other final couples are just as bad, if not worse? And the only two that came to mind were Jesse and Jade from Bride of Chucky. And what's their the ones I hate from Jason Takes Manhattan? Rennie. Rennie and Sean.
Sure. Yeah. Why not?
Yeah. Fucking hate them. They're awful.
Oh my god.
So you get me in the lake and you're not gonna get me now.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna make this short and sweet for the Black Phone. I'm gonna nominate the Grabber because where were you? What was your purpose? What did you fucking do? Like, you didn't show up. You weren't Sinister. I just feel like the movie would have been the same without him almost.
All right.
And then for other reasons that I said, but I'm just disappointed because I expected so much more from them, especially since Ethan Hawke was like promoted as being such a influential part of this movie. It's just like, where were you? You weren't there for me. So
yeah.
What you say?
All right, fair. I say Terrence Shaw, the father, played by Jeremy Davies, because he was more imposing and threatening for me than the Grabber. I honestly felt more of a threat when Gwen was in her bed, or no, just in her room, doing her little prayer, process.
Right.
And then she had to immediately get into bed and and he's just like, hey, you're supposed to be sleeping right now, or whatever he says and everything. And I just thought, like, do not come through that door. If you come through that door, I was more scared for her in the house with her father than I was for Finney.
I agree. And the way that we saw the light turn on, and it was always like she had to like run and hide in bed. Like, I know. We never got that with the Grabber.
No!
Yeah.
It was so much more threatening. And because he's supposed to be a father, and because even though he doesn't get the hug at the end, he still doesn't get his due. Yeah. So I would have liked to have seen him.
Oh my God.
You know what? That's how you solve the problem of the sequel. Kill him. That's how you solve the problem.
Right.
Let him die.
What if the twist was that he turned out to be the Grabber?
Oh God. That would be That would be disgusting. That would, then I would definitely never want to see this movie again. But and then I think Finney was even dumber because how do you not know it's your dad in a mask? But anyway,
he also has the shine. He's put up a cloak, like an invisible.
He's got a. You're getting in here. No. Stop searching for things. I'm the grabber. Anyway.
Okay, well, you can vote your heart, vote your conscience. The poll is there for you on Patreon, on Instagram, and on YouTube. I do also want to welcome some new Patreon supporters. So we've got Walter Sixsmith, Stephanie Starbright, Ryan Showers, and Wilson Barrett. And also Ryan Showers, he has his own podcast, Scream, with Ryan C. Showers, which I've actually I've guested on a few times, so you should check him out.
I listened to the most recent episode that you guested on. It was a good conversation. You guys should download it and listen.
Yeah, if you're into more Scream talk, because obviously he's talking about Scream more than we are. Go check him out. And also, I want to thank Andre Felix, as always, who is tirelessly working to put these episodes out there. So thank you, Andre. And
thank you, Andre.
If you would like to support us on Patreon, you can look for me over there. It's Zach Cherry. And if you want to start at the $1 tier, that gets you early access to all of these episodes. Also, we do a bonus episode every month, which is exclusive for Patreon, and that is the $5 tier. And this month, we've got our ranking of all the final girls. So, speaking of Julie James, we've got something we got to work out with her. It'll be interesting to see where she lands there, but there's a lot of stiff competition. So join us for that. That'll be on Patreon.
Yes.
But other than that, where can they find you on social media, Eduardo?
You can find me on Instagram at EdwardIsTruth, one word. And even though I'm taking a bit of a sabbatical from my YouTube, you can find me on there too. EdwardIsTruth, one word. Got some movie reaction videos on there. Life is intervening, so I can't do it every week for a while now. But check out what I've posted and subscribe and see if I post something new. That's all the best I can offer.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at RetroBitchface, all one word. Also my YouTube channel, which I know it seems like I'm on a sabbatical, but no, I'm just always working on the next project, which takes a little bit longer than normal. But you can also find me on Twitter at ZachCherry8. And if you would like to follow the podcast, we also have an Instagram account at no, that's mine. At the Cherry Picker Pod.
Yeah,
also one word.
That one.
That's on Instagram. And if you are watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. You can listen or watch us that way. It is the Cherry Picker, easy to find. And if you are watching us right now on YouTube, you can also listen to us by following the RSS feed link that's in the descriptions down below. That way you can do other shit and not have to sit in front of your phone or your computer and see us for an hour and 38 minutes or however long it is.
Yeah.
But what do we got going on next week?
Next week, we're doing that other one, right? That guy did. That second one.
Why do you always play coy? You can't just come out and just say it.
Next week, we're doing Us.
Yes, Jordan Peele, Us, because we're getting closer and closer to Nope, which might be one of the most anticipated movies, or at least of this summer. So that'll be exciting. But that's all we got for you today. Thank you for watching, for listening, and we will be right